Welcome. It is 6 o'clock on November the 30th, and today we have a little bonus project. So I decided to work on fabric postcards. That was one of the suggestions on the Jelly Roll Club last year, and I didn't quite have time to squeeze it in, but I decided to go ahead and start working on it because it's a great way to use scraps. All right, welcome everybody. If you don't know me, my name's Yvonne, and this is the Jelly Roll Club, where we try to share projects that are free and easy, and I try to break everything down into really simple steps so that anybody can have access to what we do and learn to become a quilter. All right, so tell me where you're from. If you can hear me, go ahead and let me know. I see everybody's already jumping on there. Let me see who we have out there. We have Eve and Christine, and who else? We have Shirley. Let me see, who else do we have? Julie is on there, Lisa. Hi everybody, Caroline and Robin. Welcome, Joanne. Welcome everybody. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Let me show you the supplies that I'm gonna need and things that we're gonna be doing today. So let me go ahead and just show you what I've got down here. So you should be able to still see me. And then this is what I have. So for today, I'm using these, these are like cardstock postcards that I got on Amazon. But if you don't have these, don't worry about it, because guess what? You can just use plain cardstock and draw the lines on there yourself. For my project, I also went and I got myself some Betty White postage so I can mail them out, because this is my fun hobby, and so I'm going to be mailing those out with some postage. The other thing that I'm using today are 9014 quilting needles by Schmetz, and let me make sure that I am focused. You see that? So 9014. I'm also going to be using Pellon, and if you see that, that's a fusible web, but you don't have to have that if you don't have access to that. I'm also going to use a little bit of lightweight interfacing, and for me, it's fusible on one side, and so let me just show you what I've got here. It just looks like this, just non-woven fusible interfacing. I'm using a little bit of ultra thin, look at that. That is ultra thin quilt batting. It's called Thermore. If you don't have access to ultra thin batting like this, you can always use 100% wool felt. So if you have wool felt, you just need something really thin. The other thing, oh, here's what my cards look like. They're called Reskid 14-point blank postcards, and they are 4x6. And it came with a huge stack, so I'm going to be making a lot of them. Look at this. And what else do I need? Oh, a Teflon pressing sheet, and of course, a couple of patterns that I have loaded on the website. Let me just show you where to find stuff. So if you're new to this channel, you can find everything on www.jellyrollclub.com. So you can go to the main page, and it looks like this. And that's just the main page. If you tab on the left or across the top, depending on how your computer is laid out or your device, you're going to go to Quick and Easy Quilts, and when you click on there, you're going to see this page. It has some previous projects that I made last year, but I'm going to keep adding stuff. So there's a tortilla keeper, there's a Duckworth quilt, there's a super easy scrap quilt, there's a gnome pillow, a little wallet, mini stockings, whatever you want to make. But if you scroll down to the bottom, you're going to get to Snowy Day card episode 1. And today I've got 2 cards that I'm working on. A happy birthday card, because I have a niece whose birthday is in January and a nephew whose birthday is in January and a grandson. So I'm going to be making 3 birthday postcards this month. All right, when you click on the link, you're going to see the little handout that looks like this. It just gives you a supply list, and if you click on this one, it's going to give you the little cupcake. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and close that because we don't need too many tabs open. And just let me show you what's going on. So we're going to be making the little cupcake postcard. So that's an example of what we're going to be working on. And the other one is this little snowman. And so just so you know what's happening, that's what we're working on. All right. And close that other window. We don't need 15 things going on. All right. So now that we're ready, let me just show you. So like normal, you're going to use fusible web. That means you're going to trace the pieces onto fabric. And so for my pieces, I just looked for some batiks that I had. Don't worry about putting the little trunk on there. You don't need that. I just traced it like this. You don't have to even reverse them. So I've got a couple of little trees here. I made my little snow guy, and I made him using like an ivory print. And then I used a little bit of batik. Now, if you notice, his hat's going the other way because that's what happens when you trace. So if you want your hat to go the opposite direction, I wasn't too picky. It's going to look like this. And so I have a scarf for my little guy, and I also have this. And let me see if I can brighten this up because this is looking a little dark. There we go. Is that better, everybody? All right, so then what I'm going to do is I'm going to have my index card. I'm going to use this last, so I'm going to set it aside. You're going to trace onto the back of fusible web, then you're going to just iron it on like I always do. And I'm going to use one piece of this ultra thin, and this is the same size as my card, but I'm going to trim that down. And I'm going to use some interfacing. So let me go ahead and get started. I'm going to assemble one, and then I'm going to make a second one. So let's make a little sandwich. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to make the little miniature quilt sandwich, because what I'm doing is I'm making a tiny quilt. All right. So I have here a piece of just fabric. And what I did is I just laid this index card down with my pencil, just a regular, nothing fancy school pencil. I'm just going to draw the outline. That's the first thing that I'm going to do. And so you can see the lines right on there. And then I need to make sure that I have a piece of either 100% wool felt or batting that's going to fit inside there. And then I need a piece of fusible interfacing that's slightly bigger than the entire little miniature quilt sandwich. And so when I'm done, it's going to look like this, and you're going to be able to see that outline. But the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to trim a tiny bit of this batting because I don't want it to go all the way out to the edges of my postcard, because when I get ready to stitch along these edges, that's going to be too bulky. And so the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm just going to trim, sliver trim a tiny bit off of the edges of that. And I'm just going to cut like 1/4 of an inch, maybe a little bit less off those edges. So I'm just going to trim it like that. And I'm going to trim it off of 2 sides, not the entire thing, because I want to be able to have that bat behind the majority of my design. All right, so now when I lay it down, it should fit just inside. I'm going to kind of tease it so that it fits all the way around, and then I may want to take a little bit of glue to glue base that down. So I'm just going to take a little bit of glue stick, not a lot, and just kind of glue based this tiny little piece of batting to that background fabric. And the reason I want to do that is because I want that not to move when I'm sewing. And you can see the glue coming through, and that's fine, it'll go away. So you're just going to press that, and if it starts to buckle up a little bit on you, just pull that off and then slide it back down. All right, so now that I have that on there, and that will dry clear, so don't worry about that purple glue back there, because this one, it says disappearing purple. So it will, when it dries, it will finally disappear, so that's not a problem. All right, so now that I have this, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add my interfacing. And the reason I'm using interfacing is because I don't want this stretching and distorting, because this can stretch and distort. And so I'm just going to lay it down. smooth it like this. And I'm going to give it a good hard press. And I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to stick it inside here, my pressing cloth, and I'm going to press it from the back side. So what I'm trying to do is get it as smooth as possible. There we go. So now that's smooth on this side, and that's kind of sealed in there. So it's like a little pocket. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put I'm going to use this to center my design. I'm going to use my little snowman to put in there. And let's talk about thread, because that's kind of important. So for this particular snow scene, I'm going to be using gray, because what I want to do is I want to be able to go ahead and sew around all of my things without stopping. I suggest you use a neutral color like gray, or maybe even variegated. If you want to stop and swap every single color for this project, that's fine, but you don't need to. All right, so I have this one here, this little tree. I used a variegated batik on that. It was just a little jelly roll scrap. No worries for that. And I can feel that, so I'm going to line it up with the top edge and the bottom edge, and I'm just going to tack that one behind the other, just like this, so that my little trees look like they're going off into the sunset. If you find that your tree, and that one's close to the edge, so I may trim that down, is too close to the edge, you can always adjust that. And so I'm just going to go ahead and do what I normally do. Peel all this stuff off, all that fusible web I put on there. And I'm going to press it all at one time. Instead of pressing it all separate, I'm just going to do one pressing. So make sure you get your little people where you want them to be. And this little snow guy is going to sit like this. And his little hat is going to go off to the side like that, towards the corner. I like how this is looking. And so now I'm going to carefully just press the entire thing. Just lay your iron down. Let me make sure I have all of these. Yep. And I'm going to just put my iron down. Does anybody have any questions about the little fabric postcards? If you don't have fusible web, you can heavily starch your pieces, and you can just glue them down if you want to with a glue stick. All right, so there I have it. So I have my little sandwich already made. It looks like this. You can see the outline through the line, and there's a little piece of thread stuck. Thank goodness it didn't get trapped. And so now it's ready to sew. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this, once it cools down, I'm going to take and I'm going to trace around my image, and this is where a clear ruler works out. This is 4.5 inches, and so I'm just going to trace kind of where the bottom and the top are going to be. You can see that. And I'm going to make sure that my design is centered, and it is. And the reason I'm drawing this line, this will get cut off later, is because I want to make sure that I'm quilting, and this doesn't have to be heavily quilted. This is a friction pen, by the way. It erases with heat. I just want to make sure that I keep my quilting inside the area that's going to be on the postcard. All right. And I'm going to measure that, make sure it's like 6 inches. That looks like it is. And I'm going to come over here, and I'm just going to give myself basically an area to quilt. Just some registration marks, nothing too heavy. Can you see that? This is a friction pen, so it will heat erase. All right, so now that I have it, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do a little bit of fussy stitching around, and I'm just going to use a single color thread. So for me, for a lot of these applique projects, I just use this silver color, and it's from Connecting Threads. It's color 21542, and I really like it because it just kind of blends in with everything. All right, so let me go over here to the sewing machine. And before I do that, let me show you what I do to prep my fabric. So now that this is ready, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add a silicone disc to the inside of my bobbin case, because that's what keeps my bobbin case smooth inside there and I don't get any weird bird's nests. All right, because I'm going to be sewing in different directions. If you want to put a couple of pins in there, you can, just to kind of anchor all of it, but you don't need to, because that interfacing will hold it all in. All right, so now I'm going to the sewing machine. I've got a question from Marjorie. Will this postcard go through the mail without a problem? Yes, but it has to be hand canceled, so you're going to have to check with your local postmaster to see if it requires extra postage. That's why I bought 2 sheets of my Betty White stamps, because I'm not sure if my postmaster is going to require extra postage, so I'll find out when I get there. All right, so now I'm going to pull this out. Making sure that it is pulled through that hole. All right. I'm going to drop my feed dogs. You can see my feed dogs are still up, so I'm going to make sure I drop my feed dogs. I don't want my feed dogs in there. I'll lift that, and I'm going to bring that forward. So I'm pulling both threads. If you notice, I have them out of the way. And I just kind of wrap my finger around them, and I'm going to start in a corner or somewhere that's not so obvious for my little applique. I'm going to drop my needle down, and I'm going to pull both of the pieces. I can pull my bottom thread up if I want to, but it's not necessary. And then I'm just going to stitch, holding both of these threads in this hand. I'm just going to stitch 1 or 2 stitches to the side before I get going. All right, so now that I've got it, I'm just going to twist my little fabric postcard, and I'm just going to sew right along the edge. And I'm just going to come over here. And I'm going to use my my fabric to kind of draw. And some of the lines I'll go over it twice, and that's okay. Make sure that you have a darning foot that you can see through it, because it makes it so much easier. Some darning feet are solid and you can't see the edge of your fabric. This one is not like that. And so now that I've got my little scarf, I can just move along. I'm going to dip off, and I'm going to come along the edge of that snowman. If you notice, I'm just using my fingers as a guide. Slow down around the curves. And just take it slow. There's no rush for this. And if it's a tiny bit wonky, it's fine. This is a homemade gift. I'm going to go ahead and remove those spare threads that are poking out. And then I'm just going to take my snowman and I'm going to come around. I'm going to pause right there, and I'm just going to reposition my hands. And the reason I do that is because I don't want to get hand cramps. And so I'm just going to come around his face. And I'm going to come 100% around his little face. And if you get a crooked little line, just go over it a couple times and you can hide it that way. All right, so I'm going to come towards me. When you get to a circle, I suggest you go counterclockwise. For whatever reason on my machine, when I free motion counterclockwise, I don't get bird's nest, but if I go clockwise, it causes problems. And it's easier with your hands to go counterclockwise. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to go counterclockwise like this to do that tight little circle before I come back around the other way. And so when I get to a spot where I can hide my ending point, then I just do my ending point and I move on, right? And come over here. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to break my thread just like this. Now, that will break my thread in my bobbin area as well. So if you have a machine that does break the thread like mine did, make sure that when you start your next section that you're actually sewing and that it's grabbing everything. And so just take your time. You see the little snowman? He's outlined completely. And we're going to go ahead and do the next thing. So for this one, I'm going to make sure that I go down like this. And I'm bringing my, see how this one's wobbling? Make sure it doesn't wobble on you. There we go. And then I'm just grabbing that so that it comes up underneath. That's a pain in the neck sometimes, but I just grab it. There we go. So I've got my bottom thread. I just need to make sure that it's coming up. All right. Now I'm going to drop this in here. I do like to bring my lower thread up. So I'm going to drop it in there in this corner. And I am going to pull that now and pull both of them through. And the reason I do that is just because it works better when I pull them. All right, so I'm going to drop that down, take 1 or 2 stitches towards me, and then go ahead and trim these little nippy edges. And that's it, super easy. Make sure that you're sewing so close to the edge, about a 1/16 of an inch. This is a good way to practice your free motion quilting or your micro stippling. If you don't want to mail these to people and you just want to give them as like little gifts, you can attach them to a gift basket. You can make them as even just gift tags if you really want to. You can frame these little guys and put them in a little picture frame. And you don't have to anchor it to a postcard at all. When I get there, I'm going to go ahead and jump over to the other side, get the other little tree, and then come around. And so for this, I'm going to jump off the tree and go right beside it. And that creates a little bit of texture. So I'm not actually sewing on this little tree, I'm sewing beside it. When I get there, then I can just kind of spin it around and reposition my hands. You're going to get like a little solid paste to that, and then it's going to be easy for you to do. So you're just going to come around. And then I can jump right there and finish that little tree. And go up and down to give that little trunk some color. If I want to, I can do different colors. Okay, and so that is it. I'm going to cut this off. And I'm going to check it to see if there's any other quilting. If you want to, you can do some little swirls up in here, but it's not necessary. That is enough quilting. And let me just trim my outside, my little loose threads that are flopping around. There's enough quilting on here that that's going to stay nice and flat. So if you look at it, I've got the little outline, and I think that does it. Oops, it looks like I lost one of my cameras. And that happens once I have too many things open on my computers. Yes, the feed dogs are in the down position. You see what's going on here. For whatever reason, this particular camera decided it didn't want to cooperate. So let me plug it in and see what it's doing. Now it's plugged in. Oh, my phone decided to do an update. Fun times, friends. All right, so now that I have it like this, I'm going to give it one hard press. And then I'm going to go ahead and trim it to size. If you notice, all of my lines are gone. So I'm going to trim this to the same exact size as my postcard, which is 4.5 by 6.5, no, 4 by 6, I'm sorry. So 4 by 6, so I'm going to line it up with the 4 line, and then I'm going to line it up with the 6 line. So I'm going to come over here. I can feel my edge. I can see the back. I'm going to go ahead and line it up right there, and I'm going to just trim it. And then once it's like this, I can take the entire thing, and I can glue it to the back of my postcard. Without any problems. Make sure I have enough on these edges. And I'm going to flip it to where I can see the numbers. That's 6 right there. And I can see that my batting is trapped inside there, which is what I want. So there's the 4. And now I'm lining it up and doing some final trimming here. I'm going to make sure that I have what I need across the bottom. And then I'm going to remove the excess across the top. So I've just been kind of making sure that I have enough across the top and the bottom, and that it's nice and straight. And then one last double check to make sure it's actually 6 inches. And that's 6 inches on that side by 4 inches on that side, and it looks really straight. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my postcard, make sure that it's facing the direction that I want, and then this will just get glued on there. So I'm going to smooth it as much as I can, and I'm going to glue. Now I could use fusible if I wanted to. I could use some fusible web on the back of this and literally fuse it to the paper, but I don't think that I will. And so I can take a little bit of this washable glue stick, because the only thing that I'm doing is trying to get it to stick. And then I'm going to let it dry so that I can go ahead and zigzag around those edges. So I'm just going to take and I'm going to press it. I'm going to put something heavy on this. And then I'm going to clip the entire thing. I'm just going to keep it clipped. If you have any larger clips, you can clip it, but I just attach it to like a board like this, and then I clip it around the edges just to let it dry. And so I set them aside nice and smooth, and I clip it all the way around those edges. And the reason I do that is because I want that to dry before I zigzag. And so I'm just going to clip, 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 and that holds it down, holds it flat. And then you can put like a big heavy book or something on it and leave it there for a little while. You can do several of these and then come back and just stitch. Now, this is it. I'm going to do the little arms with a little marker. So I can use a fabric marker. So something like this, like a fine tip marker. I can put the little eyes. I did not put a little nose on there, but I'll come back and do that here in a little bit. But I'm going to do the little eyes. I'm going to do the little buttons on his belly like this. And I'm going to do his little stick arms. with a little fabric marker. And so if you want to sew those down with a little bit of thread, you can before you do that. But I'm going to add a little nose to mine with a little bit of orange tulip marker. And so I'm just going to add a little nose to mine just like that. And so I have a little snowman. Super simple. And like I said, I can actually stitch it. This is all the stitching that's required. For the birthday cupcake one, you're going to turn it sideways. And so let me show you what I'm talking about when I say you're going to turn it sideways. So let me go over here and share my desktop. Let me see, go to recent. There we go. So if you look at this, it's vertical, but you're going to turn it to one side, just like that. So you're going to turn it so that it turns the other direction, okay? So I think this is super cute. Look at this. That's super cute. I'm going to set it to the side, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to take this. If you don't want to do the background, you don't have to. So for this, I'm going to do a slightly darker color. For most of these, jelly roll scraps will do, but this one's for my niece. And let me see, what color cupcake liner? If you notice, most of these will fit. These are all my jelly roll scraps. So the top of the cupcake fits on a jelly roll strip and the bottom. So I'm trying to size them so that they fit on there. So I'm going to do this for the cake itself. I'm going to do this piece for the frosting. And I think I'm going to do this for the background so that it's tan. And you can see my little cupcake. So the same thing as I did before. I'm just going to make sure that I have at least a 4x6 piece. Let me see, is this a little bit bigger? This is a tiny bit bigger. So I'm just going to take and trace, and I have enough for 2 of these. And I'm just going to trace around this 4x6 piece of cardstock, same as I did before. I need to make sure that I have a tiny piece of batting that's at least that size. And I'm going to go ahead, and this fabric has not been washed, so I'm going to go ahead and add a lot of steam to this fabric and go ahead and press it because I want it to pucker before I press. Normally I wash my fabric, but this one was not. So just make sure that you're pre-shrinking that so that you don't get any puckers. Just like that. And I can lay that on there, and I'm just going to trim it off. Doesn't even have to be cut with a rotary cutter or anything like that. Let me see. Like I said, I just leave a little bit of excess to give me some wiggle room. And this is going to be easy peasy. If you notice, I'm using the back of this, so I'm putting the cupcake on here because I want it to look kind of speckly. And then my cupcake is going to go on there. Or I could do it this way. Either way works fine. I don't know what side, what should I put the cupcake on? I think I like this one. You can see the frosting better. All right, so this one's going to go on a different one. And I'll go ahead and do the back side of this one. You're entitled to change your mind. It's your sewing room, friends. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. All right. Super easy. Like I said, just draw. If you don't have these cute little postcards, just draw a little bit of these lines on some cardstock and you can do the same exact thing. So don't go out there and buy anything extra if you don't need to. But I've got them linked on my Amazon page if you want to see those. All right, so I've got this, same thing. I'm going to put this over here. Remember to trim this down just a smidge. You can even cut it down with scissors if you don't feel like messing with too much stuff. And you're just going to sliver trim those edges off. And the only reason you're doing that is so that you're not sewing over that when you finally anchor it. Just like that. These little tiny rulers are handy, but be careful when you're trimming with little tiny rulers. Your rotary cutter can jump the gun and cut your finger. All right, so now I have it. Add a little glue to just anchor that down. Like I said, it doesn't even have to have a lot. You don't have to have the interfacing. I find that it stabilizes it better, especially when I'm free motion quilting on there. It does a good job. All right, so now that I have my cupcake, I'm going to trim the little cupcake. If you've noticed, there's a little dashed line that's an overlap. So my frosting is going to overlap just like this onto my cupcake. So I'm going to do white frosting. And it's going to be polka dotted. I'm okay with that. And I think for the cupcake itself, I may do aqua since it's my niece's favorite color. She likes Tiffany blue, which is like this pretty aqua. Like I said, these are jelly roll scraps. These are just leftover jelly roll scraps. And so all of these little bits came out of my sewing room. All right. Trim this off. And you'll see this is super easy. You don't even need tons of shades of fabric, just gray or cream or something that kind of blends in with most of your stuff you're doing. All right. I can feel the bottom, so I'm going to make sure that I'm feeling with my fingers, and then I'm lining it up. Same as before. Easy peasy. Just like that. Whenever you're cutting like this, turn your fabric, and that will just make it easier. All right. Trim that off. Remove the backing paper. Super fast. This is one of the fastest things. You could probably make a dozen or so of these if you wanted to, anytime that you wanted to. I'm thinking of shrinking my gnomes. Do you remember the gnome of the month I did like 3 years ago? I'm thinking of shrinking my gnomes so that they fit on postcards. What do you guys think? Should I shrink the little gnomes so we can put them on postcards this year? All right. Just like that. You want enough contrast between your background and your cupcake that it's going to look really good together. All right. Center that cupcake right there towards the bottom. Add that like this so that it overlaps. You can feel that. And have that white overlap just a hair. Iron it down like that. And then I'm going to come through here and I'm going to do all of my swirls on my cupcake with my thread. And let me show you what that looks like. So let me share my desktop. And so this is what it looks like. You're just going through the cupcake. And this is puffy paint. So if you want to know what that looks like with a little bit of puffy paint or embroidery, that's what it looks like. This is a little blanket stitch across the bottom. If you want to add it so that it looks like a cookie, and then you're just literally going to attach the entire thing with a zigzag. And then for the quilting on this one, it was literally just stitched this way and this way. Nothing fancy. That's it. So that's it, friends. I'm going to be finishing up this little cupcake, and I'm going to be finishing up this little snow guy. And I think whoever gets these is going to have a lot of fun. So these are easy to do. I'm going to be putting them out on a regular basis. If you will go to my website and you will go to Quick and Easy Gifts. Let me share that again so you know where to go. Quick and Easy Gifts. I have at the bottom, and I'm sorry for scrolling so fast, I have Snowy Day Postcard, which is this little guy right here. And then I have the birthday postcard already. You're going to be seeing a butterfly coming soon and a cardinal. For those of you who want to see what the cardinal looks like, let me find, here's my cardinal postcard. There it is. So if you want to see what the little cardinal looks like, that's what it looks like. And that has a lot more quilting. So remember, we're going to be doing a lot of these. I hope you will like and subscribe to my channel. This is what enables me to bring you all of these fun projects. So don't forget to just go in there. If you have quilty friends, share. Tell them these are free. I'm going to now zigzag stitch all the way around the edge. I think I'm going to try to find a cute variegated thread, but this is going to finish drying. And then I love how this looks. If you have a little bit of batting in there, it gives it that puffy look that I like. Then this is going to be my second cupcake, and I'm going to have a good time. All right, everybody, you guys have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your week. I hope you had a blessed Thanksgiving, and I will see you guys. Updated calendar. Don't let me forget to share that. Share the desktop, updated calendar. If you have not been to the Facebook page, go there, and I posted a whole new calendar today. And the new December calendar says Krabby Patty Grand Finale is now next Sunday. I'm going to go ahead and finish it. And then my favorite things is on the 14th. And then on the 28th of December, I'm taking a short break in there. The 28th is for the Hooded Zipper Coat preview, the Scrap Challenge preview, Friends and Flowers, Winter Friends, and more postcards. All right, and then let me see if we have any questions. So somebody said, do you put the postcard in another envelope or plastic sleeve for mailing? You don't need to, but if this is a very light colored postcard like this one, it might get dirty. So if you want to, you can put it in another envelope, or you can mail it just like this. I don't know, I'm thinking of spraying this or brushing it with a little bit of, I'm not sure. I'm thinking about it. But definitely I'm going to be mailing mine in an envelope because I don't want my postcards to get all grungy. And then over here you can just write on them. And I guess I could do a video on making envelopes. But that's it, friends. Look how cute that is. Send that to somebody you love and they will appreciate it. All right, everybody. If your local post office has Betty White stamps, that's what I'm using on mine. All right, everybody, have a wonderful rest of your week, and I will see you guys next Sunday to finish this thing behind me. All right, bye, everybody. Thank you so much.